we want to take some time today just to talk about Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau, what they meant to both the hockey community on and off the ice. And you actually had the opportunity to meet and be around Johnny Gaudreau.
One of the things, and I think what we've seen again over the last few days is how tight this hockey community is and how this hockey community comes together. And I think that, I mean, we've seen it here just locally in Arizona, how tight this Arizona hockey community is. But I think when something tragic like this happens, I think you really see the importance and the close-knit family that is hockey. And I think you see it come from all directions in all parts of the world, really. And with Johnny Hockey, I mean, his hockey ability stands out. The kid was unbelievably talented. And we talk about his stature, and you go back, he's 5'9". And when you talk about players, you know, even 10 years ago, that size player couldn't play in this league. And now Johnny Hockey has been able to burst through those barriers and be an inspiration for players of that size and stature. Amazingly skilled and talented. You see the goal he scored in the NCAA off the backhand. It's been all over Twitter the last few days. That's the kind of player he was. And I just want to tell a little story. And I know the diehards heard this when I talked in the Discord the other day. I was lucky to be a part of the coaching staff of the 2016 Team North America World Cup team. And, you know, McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon, Eichel, you name it, they were on that team. Like, I still say it's the best team ever assembled, even though they didn't win. I know. But an unbelievable hockey team. And Johnny Hockey was part of that team. And you look at Johnny Hockey, and at the time, Johnny Gaudreau was one of the premier young players in the game. But on that team, he was just a player. And Dave Tippett was running the penalty kill. And you looked at our first team meeting, you looked out into this vast pool of talent where every player in that room was on their power play. Everyone was on their power play. And he said, Dave Tippett said, well, you guys can't all be on the power play. We need some people to kill penalties. And Johnny was one of the first guys to put up his hand and goes, I'll learn. I'll be on the penalty kill. And he took such pride. One, his size is something that you don't, you know, a smaller player on the penalty kill, you want to be a big body and blocking shots. But he dug into it. And you could see his love for the game, the way he learned over that 3-week period how to learn something that he hadn't done for a very long time. He did some in college, but he wasn't a penalty killer. He was outstanding. And when he hit the ice, he had a smile on his face. He worked incredibly hard. The game was so important to him, and he loved the game. And I remember him just going, yeah, I'll do that. There's no ego. There's no, I'm better than that. I'm going to do this because it's better for my team. And I'm just impressed, thoroughly impressed. And I know he did that side of the game, but even in that tournament came up with some of the highlight reel assists because it was his playmaking that he was able to get to the puck to McDavid, and he was able to get the puck to Matthews. But his playmaking during that tournament was absolutely elite. But what you'll remember most about the Johnny Gaudreau and being around him is that he just smiled. And that was his everyday persona. He was that way away from the rink. He was that way at the rink. He was a happy, happy hockey player. And this is just tragic that the hockey world and hockey community has to lose someone like Johnny Hockey.
It really is. It's so heartbreaking. You know, both Johnny and Matthew married with young kids or kids on the way, their whole lives ahead of them. And that's, you know, one of the most heartbreaking things besides, you know, the hockey side aside, just, you know, their young families that they leave behind. You know, you talk about Johnny Gaudreau's influence for young players for smaller players in the league. And he really defied all the odds. And, you know, there's been a few guys, you know, Marty St. Louis, these smaller guys. But one of those newer guys is Cole Caulfield, who's, you know, one of the stars on the Montreal Canadiens. And just yesterday on his Instagram, he posted that he's actually going to change his number and wear number 13 going forward. He said in his post, which is a much longer post, I highly recommend reading it. It's beautifully written. But he said, I wore 13 at a point in my career because of Johnny, and now I will be wearing it again to honor him. He paved the way for smaller players and proved we had a future in the game at the highest level. I will forever be grateful to him for inspiring me and others. Rest in peace, Johnny Hockey. So a beautiful tribute from Cole Caulfield.
And I think that's you aspire to be that, I think, in life and not just in sports. You want people to look at you and you want to be an inspiration in the way you approach your daily life, in the way you approach your work, the way you approach your family, your sports, your relationships. And to see someone say that about someone else, I think is the highest form of flattery, and it's really, really touching. I think you're going to see tributes. We've seen tributes across all sports already.
Yeah.
We've seen it in baseball. I'm
Football.
certain we're going to see the football, and we're certainly going to see these type of tributes as the hockey season gets going across the league. There are no words, and it's not our story to tell. But I do think the hockey community needs to continue to be what we are and be there for each other and be part of that tight knit group that can lift somebody else up, whether it's a kind word or a nice gesture or something. Is make sure we all stay together, this hockey community. And I know Arizona's hockey community is going through a really hard time right now, losing their team. But sometimes there's things bigger than that. And I think that this is one of those things across the sport that just brings us all together. And I'm really sorry that this tragedy had to happen. And hopefully people can learn some lessons out of this, and hopefully we can all be better and put the keys down and don't get behind the wheel and make better choices. And hopefully this can finally stop being a thing that we have to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Just talking about the reaction by the hockey community, the community in Calgary specifically. Obviously, Johnny Gaudreau is a huge member of the Calgary hockey community, playing for the Flames for years. The Calgary Flames tweeted this amazing photo of all the tributes, the chalk, the flowers, the gifts, everything left on the steps of the Saddle Dome. I know there were similar things in Columbus as well, but I feel like this photo really encapsulates, what this community is. And it doesn't matter that Johnny Gaudreau decided not to re-sign with Calgary and instead go to Columbus. He was such a part of that community. I remember when he still played for the Flames during Stampede, and they always do the parade during Stampede, and he would come out wearing shorts and cowboy boots and a hat. And he really embraced the community there despite being from the US. And then when he signed in Columbus, I remember, we were doing the show and it was like, oh my God, shocking. And it was, this morning I was watching the Columbus Blue Jackets put out a live stream of some of their players and managers, speaking about Johnny and Matthew, and Zach Werenski came up and spoke, and he said, I've been with Columbus for 9 years, and the day that John signed here was like the happiest day I can remember being a Blue Jacket, so much so that my dad came over and we had a celebratory drink. And that's just like how much Johnny Gaudreau meant also to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Right. So to have an impact, not just on one, but two organizations. And I feel, extremely for everybody in both those organizations and across the league. I know he was so well loved, especially coming up through college as well in the USA hockey system. There's so many parts of hockey that he has touched, and his brother Matthew, a high school coach. It's just a tragic loss for so many different communities, and of course their family. And if you are in Columbus or in Calgary, there are candlelight vigils being held tonight, Wednesday. If you're listening on Wednesday, the Blue Jackets, they're holding one tonight at 7:30 p.m. On the Front Street Plaza outside of Nationwide Arena, and then the Flames have one tonight at 8 p.m. outside the Saddle Dome. So if you're in those areas, definitely go out and show your support for the Gaudreau family. But yeah, it's just an absolutely tragic
it struck
loss.
Those communities. It's interesting to see, like even in Calgary when he left, there was some bitter feelings, but to see that this again transcends the sport. It's about people.
And I just wanted to add something on top of all this. I mean, we were talking about the impact on not just hockey, but the family. I believe him and his brother were in town for their sister's wedding, which was the day after, I believe. And so it's just additionally tragic, and I feel for them. And I am 23. Johnny Hockey's been in my hockey life for pretty much as long as I've been watching the sport. So it's really sad and really tragic to see that kind of stumped out the way it was. So I'm a big college football fan as well. I know this is a hockey podcast, but a lot of things go on in that sport. And especially with Oklahoma State, people make light of the drinking and driving because it's the way it's presented in that sport. But this is definitely a very sobering reminder that this is not a joke. And, putting down the keys is really important.
Yeah, well said, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, so we'll continue to if we learn of new stories, if there's any Arizona hockey voices who have stories that they want to tell. We'll give them a platform.
Yeah, Craig commented on that. All the people that are associated with this team, like Brad Terliving, who was the assistant general manager here, was the general manager when at Calgary at the time that Johnny Hockey was there and signed with him, and Kachuk and the Kachuk family, and how close they were with Johnny. So there are a lot of connections here in Arizona, and just hug your kids a little closer today.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's a tough way to start off the show, but we wanted to make sure that we set aside some time to acknowledge the Gaudreaus, and we won't forget them, and we'll keep them in our hearts, and anything, that we can do and that the hockey community does to support, we'll support in that.